Hello and welcome into episode 71 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I am your host, Mark Harris, joined by co-host Colton Dodgson and a very special guest, Atlanta Braves beat reporter and former Taylor Place resident, Justin Toscano. Justin, how's it going, my man?
Man, I've been trying to get on this show for like a year. That was a
Yeah,
better intro than I expected. Man, I just feels like yesterday we are going down to Devil's Greens to get that burrito bar, man. So just excited to chop up some ASU sports with you guys.
It's a proud legacy, Taylor Place. So it's great to finally get you on. We would have had you on earlier, but we were really backlogged with our guests. And we were jam packed tight, man. Like we couldn't find any space. So I'm sorry.
It's all right. I mean, when you have like Bobby Hurley, Kenny Dillingham, and Ray Anderson on in back-to-back weeks, like, dude, I'll totally understand. I'll take a back seat. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Mark lost those episodes though, so we never got to post those.
Ah, dang.
Yeah.
Dang.
damn internet gremlins. I got him.
That's
all
tough,
it
man.
was.
It must have been the big like 1 terabyte brick that you used for like JMC videography classes. That must have been full, so it probably just lost the episodes.
Yeah,
Classic Harris.
yep, I screwed it up. That's why Ray Anderson. That's why he didn't come on the show is because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I wonder if any
Totally.
like our podcast has such a like small following, but I wonder if like someone like whether it's Hurley or Dillingham or Ray Anderson or Crow, like someone just happened to like stumble upon an episode of where Colton and I are just like ripping or something.
Well, I mean, with the clip art that you made for our cover, I don't see how it wouldn't catch their eye.
Hey, that's right.
Hey,
That's
it was either that or we hire a professional graphic designer. We got to save some bucks on this show.
uh, I was gonna say, man, the advertising money, you got to use that for the guests. Not me. I mean, I'm on here for free, but I mean, once you nab like Bloomquist, Dillingham, I mean, maybe you can get Jaden Rashada on here.
James
Just
Harden,
James Harden. Yeah,
Nicholson.
speaking of ASU basketball,
There you go.
Yeah, there's a transition.
flashback to a better time.
We're delaying the inevitable here with getting into ASU basketball. But yeah, since we last recorded, ASU actually split on the Mountain Road trip and then beat Oregon State for the first time this year after losing in Corvallis. But reality reared its ugly head down in Tucson when ASU lost to Arizona 105-60 on Saturday. And the score indicates exactly how bad of a game it was. Justin, what just from afar, what were your 30,000-foot thoughts on that game, or do you want to get into the nitty gritty?
Yeah, call them like 50,000 foot thoughts. You know what? Like, I'm not even that mad. Like, one of the guys I'm on the beat with asked me, I walked into the press box and he's like, "So the Wildcats get to 200 last night?" And it's like, honestly, like, they're just a way better team. And I think, like, to me, like, that's not like, that's not the one that bothers me. Like, the one that bothers me is when you cough it up at the University of San Diego, like, not San Diego State, the University of San Diego, losing to like Cal, I mean Stanford, right? Like some of those losses that I feel like, of course, the basketball program hasn't been a powerhouse under Bobby, but it feels like this year is just bad, man. Like, it just feels like this year, like, there's not a ton I can look at for hope for the future, especially because I feel like the guys we do have, the ones that are, like a Jemiah Neal, for example, or something like that. Like, is there any way those guys don't transfer? Like, I don't know the inner workings of the program, but it's like, dude, guys have transferred after good years. I just feel like, I don't know, man. And I love Bobby, love how long he stayed with ASU. I just, like, for some reason, more so than other years, even when he took the job, it looked like there was like this kind of feels like 2017 when they were getting pounded by those, like Kentucky and all those schools at the beginning of the year. I should say that was 2016. But like this
Right.
kind of feels like that year where it's like these guys, for the most part, Bobby has fielded like pretty good rosters that have played a somewhat exciting brand of basketball. This is like the flip side. Like these guys just really like can't hang. And I think it's just very clear. And I think the 30-foot thoughts are like, I don't know that there needs to be a change. I mean, I guess we'll get into like the pros and the cons of that, but it's just like it feels like ASU basketball's kind of hit its lowest point since like 2016.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
it's just oh, I'll let you go after this, Colton. But like, it's just there's no like, yeah, you mentioned it. There's nothing to like grasp onto, and a lot of times like Hurley teams would lose some dumb games in conference play, but they at least had these impressive non-con wins in their bag. So that's how you end up sneaking into the tournament, But they're non-con. I'm looking at their schedule. They got blown out by Mississippi State, blown out by BYU, blown out by TCU, blown out by Northwestern, and then you lose at San Diego. So it's like, and you beat Vanderbilt, which cool. But it's and then when you have the Pac-12 play and it's just things just aren't improving.
Yeah.
It's just bad, and then it just gets all highlighted in the worst way down in Tucson on the weekend in a just completely uncompetitive game for
Yeah.
most.
No, 100%. And I think Justin hit on a good point when he's talking about, and you, Mark, when you guys are talking about those non-conference losses. I think those losses are what makes games like U of A, because I think you guys are both right. U of A is just a better team. They should be at this point, right? ASU isn't going to hang with a U of A, but ASU needs to beat the teams that they can beat because they have games against teams that they probably won't be able to beat, right? So that's why those non-con losses hurt so much more. And I think something else that has stood out to me just in like the wake of these losses, I think Bobby is talking. I haven't seen, and maybe I'm just I haven't noticed it in years past, but I haven't seen him talking about the off the court stuff as much.
Yeah.
And like this season, he's doing it way more than I've ever seen him talk about it. He mentions NIL after every game and how ASU just isn't there. And I see him talking about the state of the program so much more than I have in years past. And again, maybe I just haven't noticed it. But that could be a state of like, throwing my hands up. I don't know what else to do here. We're in a position where we can't hang with these programs because we don't have the resources allocated to do so. And that's kind of eye opening to me because I haven't seen that. That, and I mention it every week. Next week we're going, or next year, I mean, uh, glad it's not next week. It would be even worse. But next year we're going to the basketball super conference, and we're going to be basement dwellers. So it's like, as bad as it sounds, this I don't know how long it's going to take until we're enjoying quality ASU basketball again. But that's just kind of what I've noticed in the wake of all of these crushing losses and letting teams get to 100 points.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Colton, because that's something I didn't even think of. But I remember like, from afar just seeing um I think it was the Northwestern one, man. Like I think the quotes coming out of that game were horrific about like the offensive cohesiveness, I think it was, or like lack thereof, and just like the themes of some of these press conferences in terms of like trust and we've all covered sports, like dude, that rarely stuff like that is rarely said so honestly. And when it is
Especially
the
that
problem.
early.
Exactly. And not certainly not in early December. And when it is said, that the problem is worse than just festering below the surface. And I think that's what kind of grips me about the whole situation is it seems like there has not been any cohesiveness. And I remember I don't know if you guys were on it, but Kyle Dodd did like a Twitter Spaces with Ralph Amsden like at around Christmas time, And I hopped on there, and like Kyle had some really good like things about just accepting the state of like college sports in terms of like NIL, like transfer portal. He's like I think one of the things he said was basically like it's tough to care more about ASU than the kids playing for ASU. And he's like, and you can kind of see that during the season. Like he was saying, like, he's like, yeah, like it stinks, but like all the people on this Twitter spaces care more about the university than the people wearing the uniform for the most part. And like, I think that's kind of what you get when you get like a lot of turnover each year. You've got some mercenaries on that team that won't be there next year. You know, they're just finishing out their careers or they'll transfer elsewhere. And like Colton, to your point, like I don't know that it's his fault. Like I'm almost prepared to defend him, but I also feel like going into the Big 12, ASU might need a fresh start. Like ASU might need momentum of some sort. And I think the most debilitating part of it is like I don't like it's been cool from afar to see the hockey arena and like to see hockey just completely like burst out the seams there. But I always thought like ASU, you know, you need the revenue sports. And like the fact that they have not addressed the basketball arena and the facilities is crazy to me because like you've got an hour and a half south, like the basketball, you know, one of the college basketball meccas is with great facilities, things like that, like great atmosphere. Um, and like I even want to preface, you know, work in there that like I don't have season tickets like you guys do. Like I don't live there. If I did, I would. Like I'd love to go to all those games. So it's not like I'm even supporting the program like that. It's just sad to see that like basketball, I can if I'm Bobby, I probably feel like a second or third or fourth or fifth priority. And it's like he's I wonder if he feels like he maxed out what he can do there. Um, and he's not blameless because I think there's moments where it looked like he could have coached better, but I just think like in a way it's sort of depressing because ASU basketball is bad right now. I don't know who we could get that's better than Bobby. But there's got to, but should you even think like that? Should you even think about, you know, or should you shoot for the stars? I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but it's been depressing to like see this team like that's had basically no fight except for a couple of those comebacks, which now look like complete flukes. Um, and like I know, you know, kids are trying, kids are playing hard, but yeah, like that U of A game was like that was probably the least of ASU's issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, I don't want to steal season ticket valor. I'm actually not one of the sickos that has those season tickets. That's Mark and Connor. So I don't want to step on any toes there, Mark. I know that's all you.
Yep.
Yeah, we're real high rollers sitting up with our $75 season tickets.
I
But
never said high rollers. I said sickos because you're still going. So
we are sickos, that's for sure.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
how many more
I
games.
respect
Like
it.
I'm dreading going to the U of A home game at
Ooh,
Desert
just
Financial.
take the over and enjoy it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
It
just book
takes
a
two to tango for
book
an
a t-
over to hit, though. That's the problem.
Dude, that was a
book a
sweat
table
fest.
at Postino like right after.
Yeah.
Just head
I
out.
had that on Saturday, that over, and man, I was like, "There's no way this doesn't hit in the first 10 minutes." By the end, I was sweating 2 points, man. ASU just fell apart.
What was the total?
I want to say I got it at 158.5.
Oh, okay.
So obviously, what was the final? Like
It was
100 to
105 to
60.
60, so it hit the over.
It got near the end, but like when you're watching a game like that, it's like how many possessions are they just going to dribble out? Because
Yeah.
they threw the reserves in with like 7 minutes left in the game, both sides. So I was like, usually these guys try, but I don't know, man. So it
Seven
was a
minutes
fun.
left in the game. That's the
That's bad,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
That's
no,
just
dude,
like
it was brutal. What's crazy too is I watched that entire game. Obviously, I had some skin in it, man. I can't just not watch it. So I guess I'm a bit of a sicko too, Mark, right? Do I
you
get
host an
your
ASU
stamp
podcast,
of approval?
so you are a sicko. That you
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
can confirm.
Okay. Watching that from start to finish essentially was crazy because ASU comes out of the gate and it's like, oh, all right, they're gonna fight. Like I want to say they
Yeah.
had a lead with like 10, I don't know, 7, 10 minutes into the game, somewhere in that range. They had a lead, right? U of A had to go on a little burst to kind of pull away. But I'm like, okay, maybe they'll stay within that 7 to 10 point range. We kind of saw that in that full court shot game last year where they just U of A just couldn't put them away, and they eventually got close enough to be able to do that. But they just they caved. U of A was too fast. They were too big. They could hit shots from the parking lot. They have that range. That is a really, really good team. But ASU, especially for a team, this is what has really stood out to me this year. I think we talked about it last week, Mark, is this is a team that's supposed to have this defensive identity, right? We talk about the steals all the time. We talk about all of these things. And that defense just folded. And it's like, okay, you're supposed to play tough on defense. Maybe they can get back into this game. But there was just, Justin said it, like U of A is just such a better team than ASU was. And they had no answers. Like even if they played their best defensive game of the season, it's like, you're going to stop Umar Ballo for that entire game? Like, there's no way. They don't have the guys. So you're right. And I think it's so tough when we're talking about what should the future hold in terms of coaching, right? What direction should they go in? Has Bobby kind of tapped out? He's had to turn this roster over each of the last 2-3 years, and if anybody had maybe not embraced, but at least tried to make the best of the current state of college basketball, I think he's been the coach that's tried to do it, right? He's hitting that transfer portal really hard. He's trying to replenish his roster every year. And we talked about those offensive cohesion questions and the trust issues. And we saw Jose Perez get benched for a half. And we saw all of these things happen, right? I mean, you don't have a group of guys. Perez came in 2 weeks before the season started, right? Like,
and I shudder to think what this team would have been without him too, because he's a competent scorer. Like that's the
that's like, before we kind of go big picture, that's the one thing in like watching what I've been able to. They just do not have any rhythm offensively. Like it's putrid. Like they don't, and it's kind of been weird because like, shoot, man, like you could even say like Herb Sendek guy, like the kind of the end of that era into Bobby's era, like Trey, and then Bobby brings Shannon, like even Cody, like dude, those guys could like create their own shots. I felt like, and like they don't have anybody like that now. Like it doesn't feel like they have Jose Perez, Jemiah Neal. I mean, like Adam Miller. But like I just don't see it to the same degree that we have with like Dort or like in years past, like even like last year. Like I just don't see, like with Cambridge, like I don't see it to the same degree where we have somebody who can kind of just like score or be like that safety blanket to stop the bleeding. Like it just isn't there, and that's
and that leads them to just and that leads them to just throw up threes at the end of the shot clock all the time, and
that's what I was gonna say. Is like you rarely see open shots. That's something you do not see from this offense, like ever, right? It's Jose Perez driving and pulling up from mid-range with a guy right in his face and somehow hitting the shot. Like every time I'm watching an ASU game, I can probably count on one hand the amount of shots that I see. I don't know, one hand might even be generous. The amount of shots that I've seen taken that I'm like, oh, okay, that has a chance, that I feel optimistic in. Like every shot they take, unless it's like an uncontested layup. And even then, I'm like, okay, hopefully this falls. Like, it's just, you're absolutely right. They don't get open looks. They don't have that microwave guy who can just come in and produce offense, right? It was Cambridge, and it was Shannon Evans, I think you mentioned too. He was huge. Lou Dort, Thunder Up. These guys. It's just those guys aren't around anymore. So
I don't want to get like too nitty gritty because I hate like shitting on the players and like I don't like.
I don't think it's on the players. I think it's the system.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then that's where it's like I think, and we'll get into the big picture stuff in a bit, but just Hurley's coaching, like it's always been like this. It's always been, like giving the players a lot of freedom and not like always having like a set plays and stuff like that. I mean, they do sometimes, obviously, but that like I feel like it's just hard to like if you do that every year, it just like this can happen, and yeah, that's why like I think it's two separate discussions when it comes to Hurley because it's like the support compare like ASU's support for men's basketball compared to like all the other power high major programs has got to be in like the bottom 5, and so you have to factor that in when you talk about it. And then the history of ASU basketball, you have to factor it in because a lot of people just like people like we're friends with, who's just like, oh, he's a bad coach. And I'm like, he is, but you have to judge him through the filter of ASU basketball. And so there's that, but it's also like people, when they say he's not that great of a coach, they're not like wrong. Like, and so it's like, you're kind of just juggling those two things. And that leads us to like why the idea of like, oh, well, we couldn't get anyone better is so prominent. It's like, it's just like, it's like you're, like, I can't even think of an analogy right now for it, but it's just like neither is like in a good spot. And you totally understand why Hurley would be looking to go elsewhere if that even happens, which I don't know, but.
Yeah, I do think that's such a tough conversation because saying that he's just a bad coach, need to hire somebody else, that kind of is like devoid of all context and nuance. And like for the most part, and here's the way I see it. Like I remember ASU basketball when we got there, boring as heck. Brutal. Just like brutal. And the
With
past few
Sendek.
years, yeah, and like the past few years have actually been a lot of fun in terms of like decent brand of basketball, like guys played hard. Like that TCU game, I felt like they gave it away, but guys played really hard. Like could have gone either way. Really appreciate like the effort from Hurley's teams pretty much every year. Like I love Bobby's intensity, his fire, like standing up for his guys, standing up for the university. Love it. But like, yeah, like the people saying he's a poor coach, like I don't think it's totally off base. Is he a better basketball coach than a lot of people? Yeah, because he's coaching at a Power 5 school. Of course he is. But relative to his peers, I think like, and this is definitely better for you guys or a Kyle Dodd type person or whoever's watched the games. I think Bobby is a good coach in terms of a great motivator, but I've never left an ASU basketball game thinking that we outcoached the opponent. Like I've never been like, man, like we really like, and granted, like maybe that was the case and we missed it because of the freedom he gives to guards. Maybe that was the case at KU or against KU at home or, through that 13-0 number 3 in the country run at the beginning of the 2017-2018 season. Like he's had his moments, but I just feel like a lot of ASU basketball games I watch, I'm just wondering like, man, like where's the composure? Like why wasn't a better set drawn up? Or like it's just I feel like, and that's probably like I don't know. It's hard to quantify because we're not out there. Like we're not in the locker room. We're not at the facility. Like I don't watch enough ASU basketball to say that, and I'm quite uncomfortable like calling for somebody's job. But I think it's like I don't know. There's a part of me that's like ASU should have some momentum going into the Big 12. There's another part of me that's like I want Bobby Hurley because I like Bobby. I don't know him personally other than when we covered him in school, but like I like him and I want him to succeed and I love his fire and I love his attitude. I love his passion. I love that he stuck with ASU when it didn't love him back in a way. And then there's the next part of me that's like, are ASU's hands tied because they still don't have an athletic director? So like, how do like, so let's just say that even, and this will be my final point because I'm rambling, I'm getting too passionate, but like Even
Hey,
if
that's
I
what we
knew,
want. That's why you're on the show, my friend.
even if I knew the next hot mid-major coach to bring up to the power 4, power 3, super conference, Big 12 level, could we even hire that person, him or her, whoever it is? Like, that's the thing, is like, what good coach, what quality person is going to come to a school when there might be a new athletic director that'll be like, oh, you're not my guy, like, sorry, or I didn't hire this girl, sorry. Like, I just think it's like, I don't know, like, it's just it speaks to such dysfunction within the athletic department and the university that's just brutal, man. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, and so this kind of when you brought up the hockey arena and the process of getting a hockey arena built quickly and like doing a great job at it, and like ASU hockey is like kind of like the shining star of the athletic department right now. And I love ASU hockey, but if that's your like by far your best program, then there's issues. Like how did that happen? And so you have the prioritization of a hockey arena before addressing anything with the basketball program. And you have the fact that this athletic director search it seems like there's just no rush at all. And you juxtapose it with the fact that U of A just hired Desiree Reed-Francois, who from Missouri, not from, Utah State or from, Western Kentucky, from Missouri and the SEC, and they are dealing with a huge budget shortfall. And so it's like when you just add all these things up, it's like it's like I just want to scream at Michael Crow, be like, dude, like having a good men's basketball program is like a good advertisement for your school.
Yeah.
And by the way, women's basketball is even worse. That's another thing to consider. But it's just when you look at it all in totality, it's like a regular, like normally functioning power blank, like you said, Justin, like power X type school, Bobby wouldn't be coming back after this year. Like even with all of what he's accomplished at ASU, like if the athletic director had been hired, I don't know, like a month after Ray Anderson had resigned, like a normal, school would have done, then this would be a different conversation. But that's not what happened. And so Bobby, maybe he takes like another job, but I think in the back of his head, he knows like, I can probably come back to ASU if I want to. The question for him is like, how am I going to improve this roster for the Big 12? But for the rest of the fan base, it's just like, what are we doing? Like, why, like, why are these decisions being made? And they seemingly just don't make logical sense in totality.
I remember last week, Mark, we talked about how much of this has to do with the Michael Crow retirement rumors, right?
Yeah.
And how much of this delay has to do with the fact that maybe there's some truth to those rumors, and he's kind of just like, I got a month left here. I'm not going to launch any AD hire. That's for the next guy, that sort of thing, right? Because we've talked about it. It doesn't feel like athletics has ever been his priority, at least from our perspective, right? It doesn't feel like he's ever emphasized athletics or viewed athletics as any sort of benefit to the university, right? So why all of a sudden now would he prioritize searching for an athletic director, months before he retires? Like, if there's truth to that. But the fact that there isn't an athletic director yet makes me think that there might be truth to that, because I don't know what other logical reason there could be for not moving on an athletic director. Because you're absolutely right. It puts your coaches, a guy like Bobby, who just got an extension last year, right? A 2-year extension.
Yep.
It puts guys like that sort of in limbo, because you have all of the rumors, you have the possible rumors that he's interviewing for other jobs. All of these things are swirling, right? I think truthfully, the most realistic scenario is he's back for one more year, right? I think financially that makes a little more sense for the university too. So you don't have to fire a guy right after giving him an extension and work on buyouts and all of that. He also has 2 4-star guys coming in from his recruiting class, right? And then 2 3-stars coming in. he's got some players. Obviously, we don't know what the exodus out of the program is going to look like and who he's going to bring in. He's proven to be somewhat adept in terms of bringing transfer talent here, but what is that going to look like in a conference that now boasts Kansas, Baylor, Iowa State? Like the list just goes
Houston,
on. Houston,
Arizona, yeah.
yeah, like that's why I keep saying, man, I can't off the top of my head. The only other schools that come to mind are UCF and Cincinnati, and I think those two programs are in a much better place than even we're in. I don't. Next season, I don't know. Hurley has proven to coach his teams to higher floors. I think, like even in seasons where we're like, this is one of the worst seasons we can remember, they're still hovering around that 500 mark. Like, whatever. How is that going to look in the Big 12 when you're playing top 25 teams almost every week in your conference schedule, right? Like, it's going to be brutal, and I think it's just a testament to the dysfunction at the highest level right now with the university and the holding pattern that the university might be in because of Crow's reported hypothesized retirement, right? Alleged retirement. We don't know if it's happening, but I struggle to see any other logical reason. Again, all speculation. Why they would be taking so long on trying to find an athletic director?
Yeah, I think you guys both mentioned the dysfunction of the athletics department right now. And I almost think it's like it almost brings me back to God, Mark's heard me yap about this for 2 years. The football dossier that was sent in that envelope and just what that started. It almost feels like it's like to me, Ray Anderson was there too long. And like if Michael Crow is going to retire, as those rumors slash reports suggest, like either blank or get off the pot. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like at this point, it's coming at a harm to the university. And I almost think it's like, and there's got to be like other stuff behind the scenes that we just like don't know about. And we just, that's
Absolutely, yeah.
hard to understand. But it almost feels like such an ego driven thing with the way the last 2 years in the athletic department have gone. Like, it's just been like, it's been tough to support, and we do it because we're alumni and like we love the school. And guys, like I'll be the first to say like I love that Michael Crow made ASU like a good degree, like did so many good things academically, but I don't think you have to pick one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. And
Yep.
every successful school, like why don't you go ask Bama, which by all intents and purposes is a great school, what it's done to have a good football program. Why
Georgia.
don't you go Georgia? Yeah, like look at the applications in Georgia. Even like, dude, even like Texas, like schools like why don't you ask them what it does to have decent programs across the board? And it's almost like to me, I think where I get hung up on this is yeah, like I agree with you, Colton. The most logical, realistic expectation for me is like Bobby comes back for another year. Like I don't see unless he gets the job at I don't know like DePaul or something like, and maybe he's just like you know what like I'm basically working on borrowed time and I'm just gonna I don't know like what he would think, but yeah, it's like I do think in general like he's coached that team to higher floors. Like I think that's been remarkable considering ASU has had like zero basketball success historically compared to like some other schools. Um, but I can't get over like how egotistical everybody was in this process in terms of like Ray Anderson protecting his own hide with Herm Edwards, not taking any of the fall. That stuff just being if they would have handled that quicker, things would have been set in motion way sooner.
Yep.
It feels like that's just my opinion from
Yep.
afar. And it's like it almost feels dead right now. Like we almost just feel dead. We don't have an athletic director. We don't know when one is coming. We don't even know if they have any ideas for one because we don't know if the president's going to be there. And so it's like it's so debilitating to have this period of just this holding pattern and like pause. And it's even worse when your rival who is in a huge budget deficit is moving quicker on these things than we are. And I think that's like, I don't know, I guess that's frustrating. And I like, if we were to talk about, I'm sure we will later, like the football program, for example, absolutely terrible team in 2023. Terrible, terrible team. Hope it's never like that again. But I can see hope in Kenny Dillingham. Like I can feel like something coming in the next few years. Like I can feel like he wants to be there. Like I think it's gonna come around sooner than later. But I just, man, like basketball is kind of one of those depressing things that makes me think about the dysfunction of the athletic department and the university as a whole. And I just cannot get over the president being so stubborn and hard-headed to the point where like the man acted like, and I love you, Michael Crow, you signed my degree, like appreciate everything, but the man acted like the proposed Pac-12 Apple TV thing was basically like virtual reality and a spaceship. Like, dude, I can't even wrap my head around the
Star
fact
Wars
that like
technology.
the fact that we are, let's just put it this way, we are so lucky Arizona pulled us to the Big 12 with them. Like we're lucky. Like we could have been left behind. Like if I were a Wazoo fan, I would be pissed seeing that ASU got to go and not a school that actually would have wanted to. Like it's ridiculous. Like it's almost like they mess. And then there's like NIL. There's so much that like our athletic department, our university has been so far behind on. But the positive is like we're gonna get new leadership soon, and I think they're, hopefully they're forward thinking.
That is, yeah, that is the light at the end of the tunnel on this. But my whole thought, like what's going through my head right now is like, why the hell are we even talking about the university on a the university president on a sports show?
Ugh,
Like
I know.
that's how broken it is, at least from the outside, that like we have to like care what Mike, like all these things that Michael Crow does, because your basketball arena has just never been addressed. And it just shows how little like the university cares about that stuff. And like it's not like football is like we think is doing better now with Dillingham, but I feel like so much of that is just because of Kenny Dillingham. It's not because of the program support. It's like Dillingham is lifting up the program just with his energy and just his passion. And like and also ASU football will always be just a little bit more supported relative to its peers than basketball. Just I think Michael Crow at least he knows that football is like, I don't know, like a bigger deal. But I say that, and then he just let the whole Herm Edwards thing happen. So it's like, yeah. And I mean, you mentioned NIL. Like, I think Colton, you mentioned this. I think it was on like our first show that Ray Anderson going on the radio and saying we're not going to do NIL in February of 2021 when it had already been around for like 7 months.
My God.
That put us in a bad spot to begin with. And the thing is, like, everyone got mad at Ray for that, deservedly so, because you can't just say that on a public radio station. But that came from Crow. Like that's the top down from Crow, you know? And
I think
so
they said they were going to develop players, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
that their hack, their ace in the hole to beat NIL was to develop players?
Yeah.
it's
That it's the I think we've seen like there's a way you don't have to be Ole Miss and like, or you don't have to be like, like you don't have to be a complete portal team. But yeah, like just, I mean, I don't know if you guys talked about this like episodes ago, but I remember like Devil's Digest Hode reporting that like Dillingham would go to boosters' houses. The man was in their houses holding meetings with other boosters to beg for NIL and got like 1.5 million in one night. Like one of those, I think the figure was. And it's like, dude, this man is like at the grassroots. He's like a grassroots politician right now, just trying to scrounge up enough to stay in the race. And it's like, I guess I fear that with a guy like Dillingham, who I think we're like very lucky to have. I mean, you guys live there. I don't know how people feel about him, but I just see the energy. I see the acumen. I see the thoughts and the forward thinking mentality. And I think we're very lucky considering the state we're in. I get worried about losing a guy like that because we're so dysfunctional. Like I get worried that like we're holding him back so much. I mean, baseball looks, like they're turning a corner, and Willie's, shoot, third year, fourth year, third.
think it's
Trying to
just
think, fourth. Yeah, I think it's his fourth. And but I think, yeah, it's like and you're right, Mark. Like that was a top-down thing. Like that was just a company messaging from the university, and it's just like I think it was just I don't know, from how they handled football, which was not swiftly enough, to just like, yeah, like, man, I love that hockey arena, and I've never been there. I've seen the pictures. Hockey team's doing great, but how do you not prioritize a revenue sport? Like, I don't. That has never made sense to me. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't get it. And to Colton's point, Bobby deserves credit, man. He's recruited better than any ASU coach since, I mean, on a large scale. Like, I feel like we've gotten good players, like good
yeah,
recruits. Has
yeah.
it turned out well every time? No, and they figured that out. But it's like I feel like he's actually giving us a fighting shot in recruiting, and I don't know how, but he's doing it. And it's like I don't know. I mean, it's almost like you mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel, Mark, after I made that point about the positive in this situation. Like I don't even know that
Potential,
we could I don't even
yeah,
know that we could see that light right now.
right. No, I know.
Yeah,
It's
I think one thing I always think about. Sorry, Mark. What were you going to say?
oh nothing. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing I always come back to when we're talking about coaches and how we view coaches. And we had the conversations. Mark, I remember we talked a lot about the Herm Edwards era, and if we're reflecting on the Bobby Hurley era, it's so hard to look back. But both of those programs were at a point where they might have hit their respective peaks under those coaches when a season was canceled, right? Like we look at the 2020 basketball team and where they were at
Yeah.
relative to the rest of the conference,
No,
right?
that's their best team that they've had.
Exactly. Same can be said with football. I mean, after Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman this year, everybody is pulling up the ASU roster and the guys that they used to have on that roster. During that season, right? And the guys who used to play here. And I wonder, obviously this is kind of a pointless exercise because there's no way of knowing, but that's a thought that always creeps into my mind is how do we reflect on Bobby? Does that change at all, or is it much of the same if that season finishes, right? If we get to see how
Yeah.
that season plays out, do we get a lot of the same, or do we see a team, I don't know, win a tournament game? How does that season end up, and how do we reflect on Bobby? But I think your point also, Justin, is spot on with the talent he's been able to bring in. We've seen guys like Josh Christopher. We've seen guys like Lou Dort. We've seen these guys come play at ASU, and those teams. Josh Christopher's, that's another huge what if because of what happened with those COVID seasons. But guys like Lou Dort and Zylan Cheatham and those guys who went to, I think they lost that game against St. John's, right? Or no, they beat St. John's and lost to some other team, whatever.
Was it? Yeah.
But they were in that tournament run. I think the talent that Bobby brings in is also, it also spotlights like why can't that talent translate into more success? And I mean, maybe it's recency bias. We're in the midst of a rough season. Last season was pretty solid. Got into that round of 64, almost advanced. That was awesome. But also, I mean, when we're talking about the stadium too, there's just so much to this. It's such a loaded discussion. When
Yeah.
we're talking about the stadium and the fact that that's been sort of like pushed off to the wayside, I think it's going to be jarring when those players are walking into Big 12 arenas next season and seeing what those facilities look like every week, right? Most facilities you go into are going to look a little better than the one that they have to play in. And I wonder what kind of effect the move to a new conference might have on the discussion around facilities. Who knows? Michael Crow might not be there. Maybe there's a more athletic, forward-thinking president who is willing to empower an athletic director and willing to empower these decisions to give these coaches the resources that they need in terms of facilities and NIL. Who knows what that looks like? But I think that's why we're talking about a president on this show, right? It's not like we can talk about an athletic director. Like at the same time, I think those decisions come from the top, right? You have to empower the entire department to be able to do what they need to stay in the race. And that just hasn't happened. It's also a testament to how well Dillingham has done. I know we mentioned him, but in the midst of all of this, he has still managed to make, at least I'm excited, most ASU football fans relatively excited given the avalanche of transfers that have come in, and not just transfers, like high level guys who could make an impact next year. So I don't know, man. That's a lot. There's a lot to talk about with this program. Like it's so hard. The second you go off on one point and you're thinking about one thing, you're like, oh well. I mean, obviously this ties into that as well. So I don't know. It's tough, but
Yeah, you know what's wild about football is like Dillingham, they were 3-9, and the dude signed a better recruiting class than U of A, which had like its best season in like 20 plus years. Like he signed like a higher rated class. And like to me, like that's insane. Like
mhm.
ASU was at its literally at its lowest. And like, yeah, like he's brought in like coaches who are like forward thinking and they're young and they recruit well. Like he's, basically like paraded around for NIL. Like he's been like a player's guy while also kind of holding to like some sort of standard, right? Like they got rid of a linebacker last year who ends up in Colorado. Like I think I just think like there's so much good there that I think is going to come around. But right now, it's like you really can't feel it because one, it's the off season, and two, there's so much other dysfunction. And like, I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty frustrating thing because it's like, yeah, there is no athletic director. Heck, there might be no president in like a few weeks, a few months, whatever it might be. All of this has just taken way, way, way too long. And your point was good, Colton, about like the Big 12 arenas. Like I think, yeah, like if you're playing basketball, you're gonna like, yeah, you're gonna walk into Allen Fieldhouse one day and then like Texas the next and Houston the next. Like I think like there's just we're behind in a lot of ways. But and I like the point about maybe we are just in a bad season. Like I hope that's it. I hope that's it. But I think the reason this is so deflating for me this season is because I really actually felt good about the program last year when they
Mhm.
made kind of what I thought was like an unexpected run a little bit, played their best basketball down the stretch, like classic Bobby team, right? They mesh until January and then they take off, they hit the gas pedal. And it's like it just exploded this year. Like I honestly don't know what happened. I think that's like what is so frustrating is like I hope we are just in one of these like blips, like it's just a bad season. But
It
man,
doesn't
I don't
feel like
know. No,
that.
it doesn't because we don't have anybody like it was always like because of the old transfer rules. It was always that we had somebody waiting in the wings. And like, next year was going to be better and there was more hope because this guy's here, this guy's back, or whatever. I just don't see it. Like maybe that recruiting class helps patch some things up, but I just don't see it. Like we feel like we're in the middle of the desert plains. That's for sure.
It's just, yeah. And with that, the team last year, for like, I really do like that team. Like I had a lot of fun watching those games for the
Same.
most part. And like, they had some good non-conference wins and like some good wins down the stretch. But if Desmond Cambridge doesn't hit that three-quarters court shot last year in Tucson, they aren't making the tournament. And
Mhm.
like it kind of came down to that, like because they barely got in. And so it's like I'm happy. It's like talking about that specific team. Like I'm happy for that team, but like it didn't really like symbolize like, oh, this program is like taking a turn forward. It's like, no, like it's just Bobby doing his best. And sometimes that gets you to the tournament, sometimes it doesn't. But one thing I saw during that game on social media from like a few ASU people, um, was like, oh, like we're a baseball school anyway, or like we're a hockey school, or like and it's like I get like the point of it is like, oh, like at least we have other sports and stuff, but it's like I feel like it's just like I'm so sick of seeing that type of thing surrounding ASU sports because where it's like, oh, well, we're a hockey school or we're a X school that, and it's like, man, like
We're a
the
nothing
fact,
school.
yeah, exactly, yes,
Yeah.
exactly, yes.
None of these teams are like flagship programs. Like, what do you mean we're a baseball school?
Yeah, we're not like
You,
we're hoping to get back to the NCAA tournament for baseball this year. We haven't been back in years, and we haven't been. When's the last time ASU was in the College World Series? Like 2012 or something. Like
2012.
it's been over 10 years for historically one of the best baseball programs in the country, and so it's like you can't even say, oh, we're a baseball school. Oh, it's like no, you can't even get down to that. Like you could say, oh, you could have said last fall, oh, we're a volleyball school. It's like, okay, like we made last year, like volleyball had a good season and they made the Sweet 16 in volleyball, but like that doesn't make you an X school. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
to grab hold of. And like hopefully, hockey and baseball can kind of just like, I mean, hockey's good, but there's only 16 teams that make the NCAA tournament for hockey, and they're ranked like I think they're like 17th. They're around like they're in that kind of area in the polls, and it's like like we could have a good hockey season, but it may not like really mean anything, and they may not have like super high profile success in the postseason, and it's like yeah, like Colton nailed it perfectly. It's nothing, and it's like it just shows how through just bad ideas and bad decision making, neglect, apathy, and I think a lot of it comes from Crow because Crow treats the men's tennis team with the exact same importance as the men's basketball team, and the football team has the same importance as the wrestling team or whatever. Like the idea that like every sport is equal, and it's like that's just not true. Like you have to understand that your fans really care about like 2.5 sports. Like they care about football and they care about men's basketball, or they care about baseball and they don't care whatever. But like there's like a top of the tier, and like women's basketball, like that doesn't get thrown in as much. But once Charlie Turner Thorne left, it's just fallen off a cliff. And especially at a time like right now when women's college basketball and women's basketball in general is having a real like just growth moment just in terms of like sports, like national sports culture and stuff like that. Like it's having its there's a word I'm looking for, but I'm forgetting. Like it's just having its breakout, and it's ASU is nowhere to be found in that. And you have schools like Oregon State has a good women's basketball. And so it's just like you just look at all of this stuff throughout the years, specifically the last like 10 years. And it's just like, yeah, it's like it's just like, oh, like we have sports and that's our that's the attraction to it.
Yeah. I've got a couple things. The first one's a question though. If ASU women's hoops, God, I hate to say it, because I'm the most optimistic person that'll like. I keep rooting for ASU just because I think it's fun, and I went there and like paid money to do so, paid student loans to do so. Like it's fun, like it's fandom. Like we can chop the stuff up all day, but at the end of the day, like I'm gonna be watching the next game I can watch because that's just like how it goes. But if ASU women's hoops played Iowa, who would score more points, Caitlin Clark or ASU women's hoops?
Uh, it probably just depends on how big the blowout is, and like how early Caitlin Clark gets subbed out in the second half. Like,
So it looks like in losses, right? ASU 67. Okay, so they played Texas and only scored 42. All right. That was in the US Virgin Islands though. So let's 52, 55. Okay, 41 against Utah they scored. If they went out against Iowa and dropped 41, I think there is a chance Caitlin Clark outscores them.
absolutely.
So you would need one of their lowest scoring outputs of the season. But to your point, I think your point is it would be close, right? Which isn't good.
No.
You never want your team to be in a race against one player.
God.
Yeah, and I don't even want to. That one was too like funny to pass up. It's just we'll be good again. We'll root for the teams, in the time being. Like it's fun being a college sports fan. Like it really is. Like I'll support the programs, really till we die. But I think it's also funny. Like you look back at the tenure of baseball when we were there, dude. This was like a perennial college World Series contender that literally just turned to mush right when we stepped on campus, which is the funniest thing. Like, I would have loved to go to some of those games at Packard when they were good with like Pachoya or like, like Kipnis or like, yeah, even go, Merrill Kelly, like those guys. Even like, dude, even the funny thing was like they got rid of Tim Esme because the recruiting was going down. That last Tim Esme team wasn't that bad. Like it's been hard for ASU to get to that level since. Like, and it's almost like I feel like they're getting there. Like I really like what we've seen from them. But yeah, like Colton's point, we're kind of like right now, kind of like a nothing school. And when we talk about Ray, I feel like it's sort of a layered discussion because yes, he did hire like JJ Van Neal. He hired, like stuck with Greg Powers. Like he hired Bobby, who I feel like has been overall like a net positive, no matter how his tenure ends.
I agree with that. Yeah.
He hired Dillingham, though they had to be pressured by boosters to do so, I think. So I don't know how much credit I give there. I like Bloomquist. So it's like it's funny because I feel like the seeds are there for like a lot of these programs as revival and resurgence. I just don't think like we need some more support and we need some more emphasis on that. And I think like I'm very curious to see who the next athletic director will be because I feel like it's like, yeah, you don't have to have one or the other. And the next president hopefully is like this. Like you can have both. Like you can be like it can be a good degree and you can have like good to decent programs. Like I think that's like doable. It's like it doesn't and I don't think like I think it's clear to set the bar. Like nobody's expecting any Arizona State program other than the triathlon team to be like Alabama football of like the 2010s. Like nobody's expecting that. We're just expecting something competitive like relatively often or like reasonably often. I think baseball, hockey's good. Baseball I think is going to get there, man. Like I think if they can just like if that pitching stays relatively steady, like it feels like those bats are just going to score enough runs, and they don't even have McLean yet, right? Like he's coming back in like a few weeks or whenever it is. So it's like they're going to get a lineup boost from that perspective, I think. But I really like the baseball team this year. Like I think Willie's done a great job. And Tracy Smith, for all you guys have probably talked about him, he's another one. Like with the COVID season, like that 2020 ASU baseball team is a big what if. I don't think it's enough to have saved his job, but I do think it's a big what if in terms of like, dude, like that team had so much talent, and that lineup was going to be so good with like decent, to good pitching, and I think I don't know. So I think baseball is going to give us something to smile about. Maybe we can pick out a few track and field events in the spring.
I mean, baseball like should I don't want to say like should be good on autopilot, but of all the sports, like that is the only like blue blood of if that's a thing of college baseball. Like, but it's just like it needs to turn at some point, And I agree with your points on like they should be able to make the tournament this year, and they probably should have last year, but. Yeah, and you mentioned the ID. Like with me, I just want someone who has been a college athletic director before, because it is the college sports space is such a unique like entity, and I want someone who's had to deal with NIL at a different school, had to deal with potentially like entering a new conference or something like that. Like I think the front runner is the guy at UConn, David Benedict, who's like from Tempe and went to ASU. And it just seems like it would just be, unless there's, some weird thing in his background, but it just seems like that would be an obvious choice. And I feel like that's not what ASU is going to do because, they gotta show everyone how smart they are by hiring some, not even athletic director who works at like some like at Comcast in their sports department or something, like just like not anything conventional. So I don't know. It's just, yeah, there's a lot to complain about, as we're on this call. Like,
Yeah.
I like,
I
wonder how many, like, it's just, I don't know. Like, you just need to, I just think for this fan base, I just want like some high level success to just like kind of get, I don't know, just get people through some of this other dysfunction.
I think the baseball team can do that.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. But I just like with the kind of they had a good run last year, man. And then like it's like they were told RPI. It came down to that and things like I don't think they were good enough to hang the last couple of years, like when it came to like the big boys. But I think like honestly, this team feels kind of special. Like I feel like they've got some good guys in that position player core that like it seems like a pretty good culture there. Like that Willie's built. I mean, shoot, they lost what's his face, Luke Hill to LSU, like starting kid who started at
Right.
shortstop as like a freshman, and they're still like they've kind of reloaded the lineup. Still really good. Isaiah Jackson's gonna be like a high round pick when it's his draft year. And I just think like I feel good about that team, man. There's like some good mojo around that team. I feel like that. I think they can bring us out of it. And worth mentioning, all of us in terms of optimism, because we sound very negative on this. I think we were all pretty supportive of Herm, like more than most people, like more than like I
I
thought.
think so
Dude,
too.
I thought that train was rolling at a certain
Me too.
point.
I mean, dude, I want to say after Jaden Daniels beat Michigan State his second year, that's when I was like, okay, they've got something here, possibly. I felt pretty good. And I mean, obviously they could recruit, right? They brought a ton of guys in. Antonio Pierce is now a head coach in the NFL, which is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but they could have done it. I think we were all. I know I was pretty supportive of it. And it just crumbled. So it was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I agree with Justin's point about baseball too. Obviously they just beat K State. That had to be pretty bittersweet for Justin, but
No, just sweet. Just
okay.
sweet.
All right. All
Yeah.
right. Just making
Dude,
sure,
I'm
man.
excited for that Big 12 baseball slate, man. We're gonna roll through that.
Yeah, that'll be
And
fun too.
there's some tough teams in there, but it won't be as hard as the Pac-12 probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, beating number 24 in a midweek last night was awesome. Take the first series. I mean, the pitching in that first series kind of scared me a little bit,
Oh
but
yeah.
I
Oh
don't know.
man.
The offense is lethal, and they're playing without arguably their best hitter or one of their best hitters in Nick McLean too. So he's going to be out for a little while, I think, but should be a pretty solid team. I'm excited to watch them.
Yeah. And I guess
Yeah.
like the reason why I don't throw ASU baseball in the like, oh, that's something to grab onto is because like they should be good this year, but we're talking on, February 21st right now, and they're 3-1. It's great, but we don't know what's going to happen. So like, yeah. But no, yeah, with Herm, I mean, I was very skeptical at first, and then it's like it's weird. Like as time went on, it's like he has that first. They go 7-5, and it was like, oh, okay, like this is they kind of kept everything together from what was left of the Graham era. And then the second year they go 7-5 with Jaden Daniels as a freshman, and they beat Oregon with that great play to Ayuk. And then you win the bowl game. You're 8-5 heading into the offseason. You're like, okay, like recruiting is going well. Like probably after that Sun Bowl was the peak of the Herm era, because that's when it was like, oh, like we're building as a program. We have a good recruiting class, and then the pandemic hits, and it's like, oh, okay, but little did we know what was going on. And then it just all, and there are some people who defend it. It's like, oh, well, if the pandemic didn't happen, then we would. It's like, well, the pandemic did happen. So it happened in literally every part of the world. So don't act like it was some unique thing that hurt ASU. And then we're still, dealing with the carnage of it, I guess. So
Yeah, yeah. And I would even go a step further in the peak of the Herm era. Do you guys remember when we were absolutely dog walking USC for most of that game? Like that team, dude, that
In
team, I have
2020?
never seen, yes,
Yeah.
I have never seen ASU football look more dominant. And I'm including the 2015 team, which was really good, but it never really like dog walked opponents quite like this,
You mean the
except for maybe
2014 team?
yeah, 2014. Because 2015 was Herb Street's. They're making the playoff year.
Oh God, dude,
But
that. Ugh.
dude, I've never seen anything with ASU football like them absolutely pulling USC down the like they looked clearly better than like a school that they should be worse than most years. And then it just all fell apart. Like for them to not win that game was so symbolic of like the entire Herm era. And
True.
yeah, but I think they're in a good spot with Dillingham. I mean, it's just it comes down to leadership, right? Like you guys work in bit we've all worked in businesses or companies or whatever. It's like that literally is what it is, like an athletics department. Like it all comes down to leadership from the university, like the top down, like president, athletics director. And if those hires aren't nailed, I hate to say it, but we're probably in the same spot.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that they don't have to be nailed. They just need to be like average hires. And
Yeah.
because like from a sports perspective, Michael Crow as a president and it's just he's below average when it comes to sports. Like Justin, you mentioned like his talk about the Apple deal. I mean, he is a huge reason why the Pac-12 dissolved
Oh,
because he
yeah.
supported Larry Scott the whole time. I was looking up this week. I just typed in Michael Scott. That's the combo. Scott and Michael Crow. I typed in
Get him.
Michael Crow, Larry Scott on Google, and one of the articles that came up was him in 2019 being like, once we sign this next deal, everyone's gonna wonder how we got passed by the Pac-12, and he was like
Ugh,
supporting Larry Scott, and I was like, man, like you
dude.
do not know what you're talking about in this, man. You just don't like it, and so yeah.
Totally complicit too in like Pac-12 networks. Like who on God's green earth like would have started a network not knowing whether they could actually get any like have any like cable providers.
Yeah.
Like the most important ones. Like it doesn't make any sense to me and he supported him like until the end pretty much and it's just oh god. I mean,
He
yeah.
was, yeah, like you mentioned, like we're lucky to be in the Big 12, and it's like, yeah,
And,
he didn't want to go, clearly, which I don't blame him for not wanting to go, but you have to be more tactful about it. Like you can't just make it.
yeah.
It's like so.
Yeah, yeah, because like I didn't want to go. I love the old Pac-12 like and then the football season this year was great. Like it was awesome for the Pac-12. And so it's like how ironic for the Pac-12. Like that's so like there's just a microcosm of Pac-12 stuff that the last season of football in the Pac-12 was just incredible. And but it's like, yeah, you're right, Mark. Like you've got to eventually when the conference is crumbling, like you've got to have an action plan, an escape plan. Like it just why did it feel like from everything we saw reported and stuff that he was just dragged kicking and screaming to the Big 12? And it's like and I know this is Ray and it's just a joke, but for Ray to be like, yeah, I'm not making that trip to Morgantown, like Gene Boy, like, whoever else can do that. It's like do you guys not realize how lucky we are to not be on an island right now in the Pac 3? Like, it's like we could have gotten left out just because we apparently had no interest in it.
Well, Colton, I mean, when we recorded it all officially went down on a Friday. Oh, I think Justin had some internet issues there, but
Okay,
it
I'm
all.
back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, it all went down on a Friday, and then, but Colton and I recorded on Thursday night, and as we were talking, it was like, well, it looks like we're going to join the Pac-12, and then, I mean, Colton, you can talk about it, but like we wake up on Friday morning and you just see all these reports, and it's like, oh, this is not a done deal at all, and
Yeah. No, it was weird because we recorded and it was like, yeah, Oregon and Washington are essentially locked for the Big Ten. And once that happens, it's like, okay, Colorado, Utah. The four corner schools are now going to exodus to, and it was kind of like, okay, what's going to happen with Stanford and Cal? They were still kind of the odd ones out, I would say, because I think throughout the whole process, we kind of figured that Oregon State and Wazoo were ultimately, if everybody left, those were going to be the two. We don't know what's going to happen to them essentially, but we recorded and it was like, yeah, that's a done deal. So we're talking about, yeah, we're probably going to end up in the Big 12, and then I just remember like teaching and my phone kept blowing up with new notifications for, Washington and Oregon are like not locks to go. They're trying to figure it out to stay. And I don't know. It was a wild morning that Friday when it was like, okay, so what is going on? And then we finally got the confirmation, and that's when it came out that Crow didn't even want to do it. It was like ASU had to throw U of A. I feel like a national play-by-play guy calling it, mixing up U of A and ASU, but U of A threw ASU on their backs and essentially carried them over the finish line, which is I don't know, that whole debacle was just insane. But we're there. Imagine if that doesn't happen. Imagine if we're still in the Pac-12, and then Michael Crow retires, and it's like, okay, that was just such a beautiful parting gift from this man. His last year on the job, and he basically ruins the football program financially. So. Yeah, man. I don't know. That was crazy. I'm happy we're there. Michael Crow can't hurt us anymore. We're in the conference. There's nothing he can do. So,
yeah,
you can just piss off president peers in the Big 12.
Yeah. Also, I love that analogy, Colton, throwing him over the bat. That's like a tested with time Tempe tradition, man. Your boy's like just not hanging throughout the night, so you throw him over your back. When the cops come to the complex and just
what would we know about that?
Nothing.
I know you had a few of those nights, Jozo.
I had none. I actually don't drink, so I'm not. Yeah, I've never had anything in my life, and just major salute to me.
Good for you, man.
But yeah, just trying to keep it long, as long as I can.
Sweet.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. Did you guys hear or see the comments from Dillingham today on the radio? Basically, just saying like, like he was asked about all the issues in college football and why coaches, and he's like yeah, there's annoying parts to it, but there's so many people that want my job who would take my job, and so like if you don't like it, you can leave type of deal. And like I really like it's I'm kind of just singing the same praises that everyone did today, but it was just so refreshing for just his mindset and his attitude leading the program is so necessary right now.
Yeah.
And you talked about him generating NIL funds basically on his own. That just shows you like how it's like it's so good that we have him right now. And because again, like ASU football, like it's not like the university or like the athletic director who doesn't exist is out there like helping them get NIL. It's like it's Dillingham. Like he's leading the charge, and he isn't like shying away from the duties he has as a coach.
Yeah. I saw like snippets of those, and I can't wait to listen to the full interview. But I love the attitude and the mindset he has leading the program. On the other hand, though, like I can honestly see like if I were an older coach, I'd be like, okay, dude, like wait till you do it for like 10 years, especially in this current landscape. Like they really need to fix the college football calendar, man. Like this is 24/7. Like dudes and guys and girls are gonna get burned out of this like real quick. But yeah, like I agree, Mark. It's kind of like we, have all worked in sports. Like it's kind of like that, and it's not always like fair, but it's like, yeah, if you don't want to, like somebody else will, or it's like any good job like that. It's like if you don't want to do it, like people will line, and that's like called, yeah, like he's right, like his job, like if he doesn't want to do it, like get out of the way because somebody else will. But the best point you made was like it's necessary. Like, can you imagine if in our current state with this athletics department and the university and Michael Crow, no athletic director, everything, if we had a football coach who wasn't like forward thinking or adaptive to the current landscape of college football. Like that would be brutal. So I'm really happy we have Kenny.
Yeah, I've never even thought about that. Like, if who were they like thinking of? Like, I know Tom Herman's name was in there, or like just
Bronco
like
Mendenhall.
Yeah, or like maybe Mendenhall would be fine because he's worked at some bad programs, but but I get your point. Like Brand X, generic college football coach. Like
Yeah.
I do, yeah, I do wonder like what the program would look like.
Yeah.
That. Well, okay, let's.
All
Colt,
right.
do you have anything?
No, this was an excellent conversation. It's always good talking to Justin. I haven't seen that beautiful face in far too long. I wish I could kiss your forehead right now, but unfortunately can't. So
Oh, damn. Love you, buddy. Thanks for having me, guys. This was, yeah, I'd come on anytime. I feel like people pay in this country, people pay far too much, good money for therapy. And like, dude, this just did the trick, man. Like, hour 30 with my boys, just get everything out that I needed to. Like, it was just like, man, I've had so much, like, we're better days are ahead, but man, what a what a weird time for ASU athletics, man. This is just it's strange seeing it from afar, and like I don't know. So thanks for letting me be on your show, and it was cathartic.
For
you know
sure.
what? It was our pleasure. We just again scheduling. Mark
Yeah.
isn't very good at it. We have like 9 guests in our queue.
Right.
Can't guarantee we'll get you on again anytime soon, but
Yeah.
no, you got the free pass, man. Anytime you want to come on this flagship radio show, you feel free.
Sure.
Thanks, man. Thanks. No, I appreciate it, boys. Thanks for having me.
Well, Justin, one thing before we wrap up, let's get a 2024 ASU football record prediction.
Ooh, you know what? I think we surprised some people. I'm gonna go 8-5. So with a bowl win. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 8-5. You know what? I was gonna go 8-4 like a regular season, but I it's baby steps. Like just like I would be just so pleased with 7 wins. Like if we even got like to 6-6, that'd be awesome. I think 8-5 though. I'm optimistic. Like I think a lot of good things are happening with that program. And like I don't know. I guess the last thing I'll say is it feels like dudes enjoy playing for Kenny and his staff. Like it feels like people who want to be there, like are there. Like we've seen Xavier and Alford like tweet about that like time and again. And it seems like dude, like he literally brought in a quarterback to compete with Jaden Rashada, and Jaden Rashada didn't just immediately transfer. Like I mean it's like stuff like that that's happening where you're like, there's got to be something behind the scenes. Like they actually enjoy playing there, and it's like I think we've got something good going. Give me 8 wins, including that bowl one.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Justin, thank you for taking some time out of your busy spring training schedule down in Florida.
Gotta love it, baby.
R2 pets, brother.
Definitely not a bunch of downtime, I'm sure. But yeah, everyone, thank you for listening. Please rate and review on your podcast app of choice. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And as always, go Devils.